Kurt Cobain was a humble guy. Even as he became one of the wealthiest musicians in the country, he still wore thrifted sweaters, beat-up Converse, and absolutely no deodorant. He used the attention of the mainstream media to hype up his favorite local bands, and brought many of them on tour with Nirvana, and all along, he downplayed his own abilities. In Utero was famously almost titled Verse, Chorus, Verse, a reference to what Kurt believed to be the repetitive nature of many of Nirvana's songs, and let's not even mention the other title he was tinkering with. But Kurt's favorite put down throughout almost all of his career is that his lyrics didn't matter. Sometimes it was playful. I decided to write songs that I would easily remember the lyrics to so I wouldn't f them up during a live show. Sometimes indifferent. I didn't care about the lyrics at all. And sometimes angry. Why in the hell do journalists insist on coming up with a second-rate Freudian evaluation of my lyrics when 90% of the time they've transcribed them incorrectly? This has led many fans of Nirvana to fall into a sort of apathy for the band's lyrics, content with the fact that they're basically nonsense and quick to mock any new listeners who try to argue that About a Girl is about a girl. But can we take these claims at face value? Was Kurt Cobain too humble for his own good? Or are his songs really that simple? Well, let's start at the beginning. Calm down, nerds. I know this isn't the literal beginning of Kurt's songwriting history, but it was the first time he had to finalize the lyrics he was singing. He couldn't make them up on stage or mumble his way through a verse. These songs were being recorded, so the things he said now actually mattered for the future, a responsibility that Kurt addressed in the manner he was most familiar with. Procrastination. Cobain would claim to have written almost all the lyrics for Bleach in a matter of hours the night before the album's first session, a point which I find a little hard to argue with. Many songs have just one verse and one chorus repeated over and over. The tracks with more variety, even the ones that attempt to tell a story, like in Floyd the Barber, seem not to be about anything at all, mostly a collection of obscenities and hard consonants. What we must acknowledge, though, is that this was the style at the time. Another controversial claim Kurt made about Bleach was that it was essentially dumbed down for the audience of Sub Pop, Nirvana's then label. Strip it down and make it sound like Aerosmith. We knew that that was the thing to do. We wanted to try to please people at first, to see what would happen. Even if he was being a little overcritical here, as he tended to be to his past projects, it does explain many of the choices made on Bleach. There are so many differences between this and Nirvana's other projects, and A Need to Fit In would explain that. But that doesn't mean some personality didn't slip through. Notably, About a Girl really was about a girl, Kurt's first girlfriend, Tracy Marander. He listened to Meet the Beatles for hours to get in the right headspace the day he wrote it, and though it's far from the simple, affectionate ballad you might expect, the end result is a song much more closely connected to Kurt's real thoughts and feelings than anything else on Bleach. I'm standing in your line. I do hope you have the time. I do pick a number 2. I do keep a date with you. Nearing the end of their relationship, Cobain began to resent the feeling that Tracy was outgrowing him. While he performed in rundown bars for pennies, Miranda worked a real job and paid the all-too-real rent on their apartment. And while she did support his artistic growth, she also sometimes couldn't help fighting him a bit, pestering him to grow up with her and start paying his fair share. The issue of money in their dynamic made Kurt picture himself in line at a deli for her love, taking a number and waiting his turn. Of course, leading to the central thesis of the song, I can't see you every night for free. Or just free, apparently. Okay. Beyond this, many songs on the album carry a shared feeling of shame and self-loathing, which basically existed in everything Kurt wrote, with the fear of authority being particularly prominent. No Recess in School, Thanking God, and Downer, and who could forget the totally meaningless verse in Paper Cuts that reads, "The lady whom I feel maternal love for cannot look me in the eyes, but I see hers, and they are blue," which could be about anyone. Even still, though we can find nuggets of meaning in this vast ocean of meaninglessness, it's hard not to take Kurt at his word. He really wasn't trying to say very much on this album, but that wouldn't last long. By 1990, he'd written the single Sliver, which oozed with childhood angst, paving the way for... A lot changed for Cobain between the releases of Bleach in 1989 and Nevermind in 1991. Kurt had left Tracy and found himself a girl that could keep up with his artsy weirdness, Toby Vale. Cobain thought she was perfect, the one. They would settle down, get married, have babies, move to a farm, have babies. Toby disagreed, so she dumped him. This, along with Nirvana's split from Sub Pop and big money contract with Geffen Records, informed much of the direction of Nevermind. No more did Kurt feel the need to conform to the sound of any one scene. He was free to make whatever the hell he wanted, and with the emotions of his first ever dumping fueling him, plus a pretty strong foundation in the form of poetry he'd been writing for months, Cobain had plenty of inspiration. Like on Smells Like Teen Spirit. It was based on a moment I've talked about before on this channel, when a friend of Kurt and bandmate of Toby Vale, Kathleen Hanna, wrote "Kurt smells like teen spirit" on the wall of his apartment, mocking the couple's closeness by claiming Cobain smelled like Vale's deodorant. But Kurt took the statement differently, informing the root of the song. Overboard and self-assured, stupid and contagious, while many of Cobain's contemporaries in the indie circles of Seattle and Tacoma, Washington believed the youth of America would lead a teen revolution that would fight back against Reagan-era conservatism, Cobain was less convinced. Everyone seems to be striving for utopia in the underground scene, but there are so many different factions and they're so segregated that it's impossible. If you can't get a f***ing underground movement to band together and to stop bickering about unnecessary little things, then how the f*** do you expect to have an effect on a mass level? There's another theory that says Teen Spirit could be more focused on Toby herself. Kurt does sing "She's overboard and self-assured," and an early lyric sheet for the song features a line, "Who will be the king and queen of the outcasted teens?" But Toby may have just been the face of this revolutionary idea for Kurt, and maybe the reason he couldn't believe in it. Instead, the song chooses to embrace the reality of teen spirit, chaos, steeped with contradictions, and embracing reality rather than chasing a pipe dream. Here we are now, entertain us. Smells Like Teen Spirit very clearly expresses an opinion of Kurt's, as do many other songs on the album, with In Bloom fighting the commodification of punk culture, a bigoted jock who sings along to songs about injustice and prejudice but knows not what it means. Stay Away about his fear of becoming one of them, not only the record industry kiss-asses he was forced to hobnob during his search for a new label, but the indie jerks he left behind in Olympia. And Lithium on religion as a cure-all, shaving your head to fight loneliness, breaking mirrors to fix ugliness, and beating horniness through sheer willpower. Meanwhile, many other songs in the album shed more light on Kurt's feelings, again mostly inspired by his breakup with Toby. In Drain You, he muses about the toxic joy of a codependent relationship, which Kurt would only expand upon later. He's smothered by mediocrity in Lounge Act, whose title conjures the image of a wrinkled has-been crooning to a sparsely populated, smoke-filled bar, and complains about the conflicting pressures of society in Come As You Are. Other songs tell stories like Something in the Way, a mildly embellished tale about Kurt's brief period of homelessness after his mom kicked him out. He likely never lived under a bridge, mostly friends' couches, but who's to say if he ever found a nice warm ditch under an overpass to sleep off a drunken night out. Polly takes the story angle in a totally different direction, being about a real kidnapped girl from Tacoma. While many artists might have shown their sympathy for the victim by putting themselves in her shoes, Kurt instead chose to embody her abuser in the song. While as far as I can find, he kept his reasoning pretty vague, it does fit with his self-loathing aura and a general anti-man attitude that Kurt often slipped into. His birth father abandoned him several times, his stepfather was abusive to his mother, so he never really had a great male role model. This affected his relationships growing up. I couldn't find any friends, male friends that I felt compatible with. I ended up hanging out with the girls a lot. I just always felt that they weren't treated with respect, especially because women are totally oppressed. Looking beyond the obvious single-issue songs, there are many themes that run through the album, like all the contradictions, Come Doused in Mud, Soaked in Bleach, Never Met a Wise Man, If So It's a Woman, Nature is a Whore, and of course, half of Teen Spirit. Plus, there's all that gun stuff. It was only in 3 songs, but it's weird that it was 3 songs in a row. Really, it's a goddamn cornucopia of meaning and double meaning, gang. But despite this, Nevermind did not release with a lyric sheet, and in many interviews, Kurt would continue to argue that the songs meant nothing, even while often explaining what they meant to him offhandedly. This idea that Kurt simply did not care culminated, ironically, in the lyrics of one of Nevermind's final tracks. On a Plane, at surface level, seems like a return to Kurt's Bleach-era prose, with a nonsense chorus and verses that vary between referencing his mother's abuse to his own feelings of loneliness. But look a little deeper and you'll find something out of place. The song has 4 meta-references to its own lyrics. I'll start this off without any words in the first verse, don't quote me on that in the second, what the hell am I trying to say in the bridge, and it is now time to make it unclear, to write off lines that don't make any sense in verse 3. Kurt would later comment on the last of these lyrics, explaining simply that was my way of saying the first couple of lines seem like statements, but they don't have any meaning. I'm just making it obvious that there's really no meaning in it, so don't take it too seriously. But this line is just proof that Kurt never had a chance to use the internet, as those of us who have now know that every time you say, I don't care, it just works to negate that sentiment. And Kurt basically said, I don't care 4 times in one song, rounding it out with the most illuminating statement, one more special message to go and then I'm done and I can go home. This was literal. On a Plane was the last song Kurt wrote lyrics for on Nevermind, and it shows. By now he had been sitting and writing for who knows how long, and he was likely getting self-conscious. So when Cobain sings it is now time to make it unclear, he doesn't just mean in On a Plane, he means on Nevermind. It was the first time he'd written so many songs back to back with even semi-personal meanings to him, so he wrote a quick Nevermind at the end to protect himself. Hey, wait. Speaking of oddly obvious title inspiration, the band would next release In Utero in September of 1993, with one of the first songs written for the album and the last in its track list, All Apologies, not boding well for its lyrical content. Sure, lines like, what else should I be, and everything's my fault do point in one direction, but the tangents the song takes led Kurt to give his classic This Song Isn't About Anything response to Nirvana biographer Mike Azerrad. The difference this time, though, is that All Apologies is the outlier. As one of 2 songs written pre-Nevermind, it stands unaffected by the massive change to Kurt's life that the band's sophomore outing brought. By 1993, Nevermind had gone quadruple platinum. Kurt was now the face of the teen revolution he mocked on Teen Spirit and constantly under a magnifying glass. A pretty bad time to pick up heroin and the ever-controversial Courtney Love. But some people don't want the quiet farm life anymore. Nevertheless, Love ended up pregnant, so Kurt grew up a little. The pair tied the knot, quit the hard drugs, and tried to settle into some kind of suburban bliss. Only for Vanity Fair to publish an interview that made them look so bad that it was literally used as evidence by CPS to take their daughter away, 1 week after she was born. In Utero was written in the pits of this love, fear, conflict, and despair, and for once, Kurt wouldn't even try to keep this from affecting the lyrics. He spent months tinkering with the phrasings and meanings so that basically every song on the album, except for these 2, had a pretty obvious message. Like the opening track, Serve the Servants. Teenage angst paid off well, and self-appointed judges judged. Kurt rose to new heights after Nevermind, but with that came new problems. If she floats, then she is not a witch makes reference to the Salem witch trials, a famous example of guilty till proven innocent judgment that Cobain felt particularly familiar with. His final message is even more personal. He sings, I tried hard to have a father, but instead I had a dad. I just want you to know that I don't hate you anymore, concluding that legendary divorce is such a bore. With these words, Kurt announces that he really has grown up. He doesn't need to fight his childhood battles in song form anymore. He's got bigger fish to fry. I guess the most obvious of these is fame, the villain at the core of Serve the Servants, and the most obvious change Nevermind brought. Frances Farmer will have her revenge on Seattle uses the same witch hunt imagery as Serve the Servants, with its title referencing Frances Farmer, an actress who faced harassment and torment her whole life over alleged communist ties, drug abuse, and mental health problems. She was someone who Kurt closely identified with, explaining they just constantly had her arrested for no reason and totally ruined her reputation by writing right-wing lies in magazines and newspapers and stuff, and it turned her insane. In the song he sings, it's so relieving to know that you're leaving as soon as you get paid, to all the bottom feeders who approached him after Nevermind, and honored Frances herself with the line, she'll come back as fire to burn all the liars, leave a blanket of ash on the ground. Betrayal ties this song to Rape Me, a track that Kurt would, as you'd expect, later claim to be about as straightforward as its title. Very simple. Despite the bridge reading, my favorite inside source, I'll kiss your open sores. Appreciate your concern, you're gonna stink and burn. Where did all the awful claims in the life-ruining Vanity Fair article come from? An inside source, of course. Kurt even wrote to our favorite inside source in the closing lines of that year's Christmas card to the former friend he held responsible. Radio-friendly Unit Shifters goes in on the issue of fame as well, attacking the invasion of our privacy and use just once and destroy mentality of many thoughtless music fans and critics. But it also evokes imagery of pregnancy with its Afterbirth of a Nation line. Like the breakup on Nevermind, Kurt sprinkles in mentions of birth and babies throughout In Utero. It would have been a pretty front-of-mind topic for him, as reflected in the album's title. Every wet nurse refuses to feed the psychopathic protagonist of Scentless Apprentice, Kurt climbs an umbilical noose on heart-shaped box. And then there's pennyroyal tea. Again, the title kind of gives this one away. Pennyroyal tea is made of the pennyroyal herb, which was often used as an old-world abortive method. Kurt sings in the chorus that he sits and drinks pennyroyal tea to distill the life that's inside of me. But when you look closer, you'll notice a possible second meaning. I'm on warm milk and laxatives, cherry-flavored antacids, I'm so tired I can't sleep, I'm a liar and a thief. These lyrics can just as likely support a theme of substance abuse. Yeah, you're not likely to overdose on Tums, but Kurt also isn't likely to directly allude to heroin when he was actively fighting a court case about it. He does, however, make more obvious references to the drug though, like on Dumb, where he sings about feeling uneasy in his newfound happiness. Yeah, despite that intro, Kurt would get his daughter back, and the In Utero era would have its positive moments, though complex, a sentiment echoed in the chorus of Frances Farmer. Yet he also sings, "My heart is broke, but I have some glue. Help me inhale and mend it with you. A soothing burn and hangover, hanging on a cloud with someone, likely Courtney." Much of the early days of their relationship were spent high, a habit that would bring the couple many headaches later. These issues come to a head in Heart-Shaped Box, a song Kurt claimed to be about sad TV commercials, which would make sense if you ignore all the "she eyes me like a Pisces when I am weak, cut myself on angel hair and baby's breath, I've been locked inside your heart-shaped box for weeks." No, this song is about the perversion of love. Toxic love. Courtney Love, who just so happened to own a collection of heart-shaped candy boxes. That's the complicated thing about Kurt and Courtney. Cobain would spend years defending his wife, whose personality, sense of humor, and lifestyle often rubbed people the wrong way. Despite this, Kurt absolutely did not think she was perfect. There was always talk of all-out verbal brawls between the two, spurred by Love's controlling nature or Cobain's anger, made all the worse by the couple's fluctuating and often incompatible drug habits. Courtney quit everything but smoking when she got pregnant. Kurt didn't. Not for long. But he was still fiercely loyal, even if lines like "forever in debt to your priceless advice" don't leave much to the imagination. He'd return to the subject of toxic love on Milk It, writing, "We feed off each other, we can share our endorphins, I own my own pet virus," and, well, you can read this one. But like on Nevermind, there are many overarching themes and patterns that touch multiple songs. There's references to death in Scentless Apprentice, Milk It, Heart-Shaped Box, and Penny Royalty. A lot of the same songs with birth imagery, actually. There's Kurt's famous Contradictions in Frances Farmer, Dumb, Heart-Shaped Box, Milk It, and All Apologies. He even jokes about this in Very Ape. Contradictionary flies, I take pride as the king of literature. Meanwhile, just about every song on In Utero makes some reference to physical pain or illness, because on top of everything else I've mentioned, Kurt also started suffering with chronic pain around this time. Bones Hurt on Serve the Servants, Open Sores on Rape Me, disease-covered Puget Sound on Frances Farmer, Skin the Sun on Dumb, Lack of Iron on Milk It, Anemic Royalty on Penny Royalty, Acneed with cigarette burns on Radio Friendly, and even a heart attack on Tourette's. Good job, Tourette's. You made it into the video. The truth is, there was a lot on Kurt Cobain's mind in 1993, and in 1991, and sort of 1989. I guess you've probably noticed by now that very few of these songs really stick to one set theme or subject. Even if they're mostly about pregnancy or drug use, they'll just as likely swing between the two of them or veer off in a totally different direction. This would bring Kurt to a pretty frustrating conclusion when looking back at the lyrics of his entire catalog. There's definitely some pieces in there that reflect on my personal life, but really they aren't as personal as everyone thinks they are. I would like them to be more personal. The emotions, the songs themselves are personal. I can't do it. I've tried to write personally, and it just doesn't seem to work. It would be too obvious. Some things that you could read in could fit into anyone's life that had any amount of pain at all. It's pretty cliche. I guess that brings us back to the core idea of the video. Kurt Cobain was a humble guy, and sometimes he was just too humble. This is one of those times. Even if he liked the lyrics on In Utero more than any other album he wrote, he still wouldn't boast, just saying, I really like them. There's nothing that's embarrassing on them, so I might print them this time. And he did. I guess that's the best we can hope for. You know, there were a lot of times when I was reading the lyrics to a song like Big Cheese and just wondered what was going on inside Kurt's mind when he wrote this. But I had to catch myself, because this was not an issue unique to Nirvana. Like my favorite songwriter, Paul McCartney, had the perfect ending to his debut solo album with Maybe I'm Amazed, a huge, beautiful, and deeply personal track that he nonetheless followed with Karina Kror as the album's finale, a song whose only vocal track features McCartney making monkey noises. If you want to know why Paul might have chosen a track like that as a closer, or any number of other strange choices he made on his first album post-Beatles breakup, you should check out episode 2 of my series McCartney After the Beatles, out now on Nebula. I first partnered with Nebula in 2024. They're a creator-owned prestige streaming service with years worth of original and exclusive videos with some of the most talented creators online right now. A few months ago, they approached me about making my own Nebula Plus series, and I loved the idea. They edit while I write, meaning I can produce twice as many videos. Case in point, episode 1 came out in December, and episode 2 came out a week ago, with episode 3 set to release next month, quite a bit sooner than I'll be able to finish my next video for this channel. The best part is, if you go to nebula.tv/markbutevil or scan the QR code on screen now, not only will you be supporting my channel, you'll get 50% off an annual subscription. I'm really excited to have this opportunity to make more videos, and I'm hoping you'll give McCartney After the Beatles a shot, because it's one of my favorite stories in music history. Again, the place to go is nebula.tv/markbutevil for a huge discount and loads of exclusive videos. Give it a shot today.